So Sapphire have kindly sent me another card to review, and this is the Vapor X R7 250X. Now this one is a slightly different card. Being the Vapor X model, it means that it's an overclocked model with this ginormous cooler on the front of it, which is tremendously efficient but also incredibly silent. You cannot hear this thing at all once it's running through your case. And being a value card, the 250 series, this is probably the most expensive there is. It comes in at about, I think, £80, but still that's a good reasonable price for entry-level gaming. I'd say you're going to get really low to mid settings pretty damn well on this card. Anything above that, you're going to have stuttering issues, etc. But if you're willing to sacrifice that, that's okay. But also important to note is that this card, unlike its other 250 counterparts, requires extra power going into it. So you're going to need a 6 adapter pin going in there to actually power this card. But also good with these cards is that it actually runs 3 screens, and for 80 quid that's a cheap option to actually get multiple screens running off your card as well, which is also nice. But anyway, so let's talk about the more important things. Let's talk about the FPS results that this card can actually get. Now for some FPS results running on low settings, Dota 2 1080p resolution, literally no drops whatsoever, running at 120 frames average, even in the big congested team fights like here, no drops whatsoever, ran smooth as silk, and that's exactly what you want from this card. But bear in mind guys, I've got quite a high specification rig behind the card, whereas usually you'd have something a little bit more chunky in a PC like this. But on a low spec, medium spec card, you probably might not get 120 FPS on low settings on this card. Just bear that in mind. But on high specs, running in high settings right now on the same specs, we get 87 average frames. Still incredibly smooth. There were some drops in some team fight situations. That was kind of to be expected, but still very smooth. And I'm recording with fraps and still recording at 60 FPS. So that's quite demanding on itself and still running very well. Thoroughly impressive on MOBA games in general. It's going to run them no problem. I wanted to see how this card would handle something slightly more demanding, so loaded up some Tomb Raider and did some benchmarks. And here on the ultra settings with all the crazy tessellation to the hair, we're getting an average of 22 frames a second. This is on the same specifications as you saw in Dota 2 as well. And on the low settings, we're getting 104 frames on average. So 2 very different results there. Like I said, this card really performs well in low results or medium sort of settings coming out. You've got to find the right halfway point for yourselves. If you're playing a single player game like this, you obviously want to turn graphics up, but you don't want to lose playability by stuttering lag going on here and there. So, you know, some things you can set high, some things you can set low, and you can have a really good gaming experience throughout with the 250X, providing that you sacrifice some of those higher details. So overall, the Vapor X R7 250X is not a bad little card. For about 70 to 80 pounds. You can get some good performance out of this. I recommend this towards those multiplayer online kind of guys that like to stay on the same games for long periods of time. Not too fussed about any of the new games that are coming out. Great for sort of people that stick to one game and play it constantly and constantly and constantly. I think a card like this is really good. A nice, cheap, easy pickup, especially if you want to join in with your friends with MOBA games in particular. You don't need anything more powerful than this really to run those games. But another bit of advice is that for a little bit more, you can get the 260X here, which has the Mantle API on there, which gives you some additional FPS on certain games. Also, it has AMD's True Audio on there as well, so better audio quality coming out as well in different environments, and you know, you can enjoy that atmosphere that you get from that audio experience. And that's only a little bit more. And when I compared the results of these two cards playing Counter-Strike Go, the 260 was getting about 20 FPS on average more in that game, but it could have varied between different games, bear that in mind, but still 20 FPS in CSGO. But anyways, thanks guys for tuning into this review. I hope you enjoyed it, I hope it's helpful, and leave comments and subscribe.